All right, Brad, we are back on the podcast. And I just looked at Twitter 5 seconds ago. No, the Giants did not sign anybody to a $275 million contract.
They will in the next 10 minutes while we're recording. And then we're going to have to quickly look at the numbers and all kinds of stuff. That's how it always goes with us.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, I mean, not a whole lot of Giants news except them losing a big-time player from last year because of free agency. We'll talk about that in a second. But we're mostly going to talk about the free agent market currently and just the crazy amount of signings that have happened since Thanksgiving. We'll also look at who's still out there and who could be closely tied to the team, possible person that they could sign. And then I think we're going to get my son here later in the show. He's got some hot takes for us, and we'll run those hot takes by you and myself and discuss some of those hot takes. We'll actually, and we'll also see how hot they are. Like some people say they have hot takes, and I'm like, oh, like that's kind of lukewarm. Like it's not hot.
But I think you can call it a hot take because it's somebody under the age of 25, right? So if you're under the age of 25, people don't take you as seriously. So you say something and somebody goes, that's a hot take. But no, I mean, but the difference is Bryant is really on top of his stuff, and he was throwing some stuff out there the other day, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting topic to kind of kick around. So yeah, I'm glad we're having him on because I want to hear the hot takes.
All right, so let's look at the list of stuff that has happened recently. I just put together a bunch of the most recent signings. Some of them much bigger than others, and we'll just go through them. I don't really have them in any kind of list whatsoever. And how we're mostly going to talk about how it relates to the Giants, because some of these situations they don't really relate to the Giants in any way, so they're not really all that important for us to talk about. Something like Jose Barrios gets extended by the Blue Jays. Like he wasn't available to the Giants, so we don't really need to talk about that one necessarily. But I think the first one that really pops out, even more so than the Gausman thing, is the Max Scherzer deal. 3 years, $130 million to the Mets. And the Mets, on top of them signing other players, and we'll get to one of those specifically in a second here. But Max Scherzer at age 37 all of a sudden becomes the highest paid per year. Is it starting pitcher, right? Or is it player? Is he the highest paid player?
It's player.
Wow.
He has now set the new Major League Baseball record for average salary per year.
So when we had talked about this, you and I just thinking about, would you go 2 years, 80 for Max? And that was like, that's 40. Does he probably has one great year in him. That maybe that second year, you're just okay with him being above average. And it's probably worth it in today's market, especially when it comes to starting pitching, because the Giants, we saw last year how they would get a good game and then they'd maybe have the next game is like all of a bullpen game. And then you get another good. And so, there's a lot of that going on. So to have like a stud guy is great.
Yeah.
So he is even more valuable in this new age of how you use starting pitching because he is an old school starting pitcher. But 3 years, $130 million. I don't imagine the Giants would have gone there. Maybe they would have gone to that third year. It is an opt out for Max as well. He can opt out in that third year, before that third year if he wants. But what were you thinking about when you heard 3 for 130?
Well, yesterday when Brian said, I think it was yesterday or the day before, he said, would you be okay with 2 years at 80? And I was like, yeah. And for one of the reasons you just said too, you have a guy that can give you 8 innings every time he goes out. He has the possibility of giving you 8 or 9. I know this is the day and age of the bullpen game, but man, I'll take that, for $40 million. Because again, if that's, like I said on the show last week, I I would love to see the Giants load up on starting pitching, and that's starting to kind of wane right now with everybody who's getting signed. But I would love to see the Giants load up on starting pitching and just being dominant in that aspect of the game, because they can always go out and find hitters. The Giants find hitters. Farhan finds hitters.
Yep.
So I would be totally fine with putting a lot of Jack into the starting rotation. But again, it's being kicked around out there too. They're saying the Giants brass is basically saying, well, we're not looking for a 5-man rotation. We're
Yep.
looking for 162 games.
Right.
So I mean, they're looking at like a 7 or 8 man, not rotation, but 7 or 8 starting pitchers that can pop in and give you a game here or there. And then
Probably with options would be preferable as well.
Yeah,
because they like
absolutely.
playing that options game up and down and back and forth with AAA.
Well,
Okay,
and are we gonna have the COVID taxi squad this
Sure,
year? I mean,
sure.
that was huge. The Giants really used that to their benefit last year too.
I mean, with this new virus, the Omicron variant,
I don't know, man.
we may have.
I can't even
we may
keep
have
up, man.
The taxi squad may just be there for like the next 5 years. It just
Yeah,
just
you
may
may
be
end up
part of
having
the
a
new thing.
it may end up having like a 40-man roster. Instead of a 40-man roster, you have a 40-man active player roster. You just got like 15 guys hanging around ready to come in. So who
Yeah.
knows?
All right, so I think the main secondary question I have about this deal is he's out of our division, which is awesome. We'll still have to face him. He's in the National League still.
Yeah.
Here was my number one worry about him. I think it was everybody's worry about him. How he tired down the stretch. He didn't throw that many innings when you look at the overall numbers for him to get to be as I guess as I don't know, would you say he was injured? Or was he just tired? Was there just so much wear and tear on his body that he was, he just too worn out to start that game on his rest? Because if you think about where the Giants want to go, now he will get you there, but there is a worry when you get to about 180 innings before the playoffs, and then his body kind of wears out.
Yeah, and well, remember before the trade deadline, they had to showcase him in a game before the trade deadline just to say, look, his arm's fine. We can trade him. You can go ahead and get him, and you can feel comfortable. Was that a factor down the stretch? I don't really know. But Harold Reynolds had a really awesome little point today on MLB Network. He said the Dodgers really, they traded for him halfway through the season, and he was going to be their guy. He was going to get him to the World Series and win the World Series. But because of that, they were riding him, and the Dodgers didn't have anybody to jump in and say, no, Max, you can't take the ball today. You just had it 2 days ago. But now with the Mets, maybe you have somebody in that can say, we need to save you from yourself because you're Max Scherzer. You're going to want to pitch every day if you could, but we have to step in and say, no, you're every 5th day. That's just the way it's going to be. Or every 6th day. Math. Yeah. So I think that's what it comes down to. You trade for this piece. You got to get as many innings out of him as you can down the stretch and in the playoffs, and then deep into the playoffs, hopefully. And you're just going to use him because you traded for him, and he's yours for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And maybe, and I talked about that on the show too. Maybe that's why he said he had fatigue, because he knew he was going to be coming into a big contract.
Sure.
If he knows his shoulder's not feeling 100%, is he really going to go for it when you've got this offseason where he didn't know it? I mean, maybe he did, but he was going to get $130 million for 3 years. I mean, that's hard to say. That I hate to say that, because then you're basically saying, well, Scherzer wasn't a gamer. He wasn't, he didn't push himself. He didn't push himself for the team and all that. But I don't really know. But if you're ending your season with this team that you're probably not going to be with next year, are you going to give it everything you've got? Or are you going to hang on and say, I don't want shoulder surgery, and then I'm going to miss my last payday. Because again, what is he? He's coming into this season at 37 years old. So.
Yeah. All right. I think actually Brian's ready to join us. So why don't we hit the
right
intro? Hit the intro music, and then we'll bring him in right after the intro.
Bedrosian throws to Sandberg, and the pitch is grounded to second base. Thompson has it, throws to first. It's over. 27 years of waiting have come to an end. The Giants have won the pennant.
All right, we are back here, and Brian has joined us. He joined us a little bit early. He'll be back for. He has his own segment coming up pretty soon. Hot Take Bri will be upon us, but we're just going to keep talking about a lot of the moves that have been made, and we'll get his takes on it as well. So let's talk about the next thing, which that I was going to go after. We got to talk about Gausman. Gausman, 5 years to the Blue Jays, $110 million. The fact that the Giants didn't match that contract, or maybe we're not in the vicinity of that contract, makes me think, now I don't know for sure, this is just me thinking maybe what they were thinking, which is, I wonder if they didn't want to go to that 5th year, because the per year rate for him is about where, I don't know, about where I thought it would be, 20-ish, a couple more, 22, 23. That sounds fair, but I wonder if the Giants just decided, that 5th year is a little bit too much. We can, we don't like giving out these like long contracts to pitchers. Brian, what did you think about when you saw that number for Gausman?
That, I think I forgot who I was listening to. I think it was the Giants Locked On podcast, but I think the guy who runs that podcast was doing he like figured out everyone who was on the free agent market, like their average, what they thought what he thought they were going to get for per year, what their contract was going to look like. And everyone has been getting over what like the math, calculated what would be that average. So I expected it to be more than what I thought, but I think that was probably more than even what I expected to be more of that. So with Gausman, yeah, it's super. I didn't even, for some reason, I guess I must have not been following the news. I thought he was going to the Mets. I didn't expect Toronto to be like that much of a finalist at the end.
And the Mets missed out on him. Like, they were in, and I wonder if, we were talking about this kind of in our text, but they missed out on Matz. They missed out on Gausman. And I wonder if that's the reason the number was 130 for Scherzer. It's because they were just like, look, we're not going to miss on this guy. So we're going to pay a little bit above what we would have normally paid, because that what we normally would have paid is what other teams are willing to pay. So that's pretty. By the way, Ben Kaspick is the guy who does the Locked On Giants. We've talked to Ben before when we were doing stuff on the Spotify Green Room, the old locker room show. We had Ben on once. Brad, any thoughts on Gausman?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because $43 million a year, that's Gausman and Matz, right? So they probably said, we had this money earmarked, and we're not going to go after Strowman. We're going to get the prize. We're going to get the number one prize. I keep saying the prize, but he's 37 years old. He's going into the season. He's going to hit 38. That's old. I mean, that's, here I say with the gray beard, but I mean, a 37-year-old hitting 43 million, that is scary as hell. But, like you said, they had that money kind of put aside. So back to Gausman, hate to see him go. The Giants are starting to make a habit of grabbing, hey, we'll grab this guy, we'll grab that guy, we'll see what he can do, turn him around, and then he's out the door for a bunch more than he came in at. But and again, can the Giants continue to do that? We had a signing today. I'll let Garrett reveal that later. A pitcher that was signed for the Giants, and we'll see if the Giants can continue to do the same thing. But I hate to see him go. I wanted to see him back with the old gang. But that kind of leaves us open for guys like, still Strowman and Rodon. Because a lot of the top pitchers are kind of falling off the board we're creeping up onto like 60 hours left possibly before we hit a lockdown. So, yeah.
So Keith Law, formerly of ESPN and currently from The Athletic, whether, some people really like Keith Law, they live by everything that Keith Law writes, and some people do not, but I want to read from his piece in The Athletic today. He said, Gausman was my number 2 starter in this year's free agent class, just behind Marcus Strowman, and had some argument to be the top guy because he has a higher ceiling than Strowman, but a lesser track record of performance. Gausman's resume as a high-end starter, someone who'd comfortably fit in the top 2 spots of any rotation, mostly boils down to the last 2 seasons since he arrived in San Francisco. This is the pitcher I always thought he would be, or he could be, as did the Orioles. I'm sure when they took him with the 4th pick in the 2012 draft out of LSU. Multiple issues from the clubs disagreeing with Gausman over where he should stand on the rubber to efforts to get him to develop an average breaking ball led to his disappointing end in Baltimore, and he didn't reach his potential until he went to the Giants, who told him to stand where the heck he wanted and throw that filthy splitter all the time. So I was actually kind of surprised that Gausman was his number 2 free agent pitcher. Now, all of the, you got to go down to number 5 until you got to Marcus Strowman, where he was on Keith's list. And then you get down to number 8, and that's where Gausman sat of all of the 50 free agents. Now, he's not putting Scherzer 1, right? Because he's looking at longevity, he's looking at length of contract and such. So, for instance, Carlos Correa is his number 1 ace free agent. So I was actually surprised, and maybe because we had Gausman, and maybe because I took him for granted a little bit, it's almost like these other teams saw him as a much better free agent than even I did. Someone who's watched him pitch pretty much lights out, except for maybe the first 10 starts of the second half this season. And so it's kind of interesting to see him as that highly sought out, which makes me wonder, and I know this is going to be on your list in the last segment of this show, Brad, which we're going to do a free agent thing for the Giants. But could Strowman be a guy that the Giants would give Gausman money to? I would imagine now, because of Gausman and Robbie Ray, and we can even mention Robbie Ray today. I don't think the Giants really had him in their sights, but Robbie Ray 5 for 115 to the Mariners. That tells me that Strowman is getting more than both of those guys because of what has been set. Brad, do you think Strowman is someone who they may go after or should go after?
I think he is someone that they should go after. Will they? I don't know, because the Giants are fans of their reclamation project. Although Strowman had a down year last year. He sat out the COVID year, and he pitched last year. Didn't have a fantastic year, but I think he actually ended up with the best FIP of his career last year at 3.49, which isn't outstanding, but it's good. And he's 30 years old. What type of deal is he looking for? Is he looking for that 7? Is he looking for 5? Or is he happy to take a 1 or 2 with the Giants and just try to kind of build up his stock again to see what the Giants pitching brass can do with him? But yeah, him and Rodon, I think, are a couple of pitchers that are young enough where the Giants would look at them. But the Giants just aren't in the habit of giving out, 5 to 7 year deals for starting pitchers.
And that is the thing, right? Is if the Giants are out on him, then that means automatically they will tend towards these reclamation projects who will not be getting 5-year deals. They'll be getting shorter term deals. Someone like a Corey Kluber, who just got, who did he get signed by? He got signed by the Rays,
Right.
1 year, $8 million. He would have been one of those reclamation projects because, just 2 or 3 years ago, he was a flat out stud. And then he's had some injuries and he hasn't been himself of late. So we'll see what they do. But Brian, I know Strowman is like number 1 on your list. Do you think the Giants would actually fork out the years? I know that they'd be willing to fork out the per year. I just don't think that they'll be able to fork out the years.
I think my list has been very subject to change, just about like every day. So I think yesterday it was probably Strowman, today it was Rodon. So with Strowman, yeah, I don't know. I think you guys are right. Like I think he would be awesome on the team, but again, if we didn't do the Gausman, if we didn't go all in, then what? What? Why would we do the same for Strowman?
Yeah.
I liked the Rodon. I thought he was going to be less, but then I just looked it up. Is he a Boris client?
You know what? I saw a list of Boris clients earlier, and I don't remember if he was on it.
Because if he is, then maybe it's not gonna.
Yeah, and the question too is, with all these guys signing right now, are they all trying to kind of feel the heat? Like, I'm not quite sure, what's going to happen after the lockout, and what are the new contracts going to be like? Here's a list of Boris clients. Yes, he is on there. There he is. So that kind of adds to the mystique, doesn't it? A little bit.
Yep.
And the reason why Boris is Boris and Zadie, I don't imagine they exchange Christmas cards, because Boris's whole thing is about the length and the PR that you get out of these crazy deals.
Yeah.
That's just not the way that Zadie necessarily works. Now, Zadie has been in on someone like a Bryce Harper, which that was going to be, but he's an everyday player.
Yeah.
He was someone who was still very young, so he's worth you investing those long deals. Like the next person I'll talk about, someone who's now out of our division. We love seeing Dodgers get signed elsewhere, but I am scared about who they're going to go after, because now they have so much money to spend, which is Corey Seager. Corey Seager signed a 10-year, $325 million contract with the Rangers, adding to the 7-year, $175 million contract Marcus Semien signed with the Rangers. And then they even added John Gray at 4 years for $56. So 2 guys taken out of the National League West. I don't know what the Rangers. It's every once in a while they do this. They go get an A-Rod. Now they go get a Seager. They get a Semien. Man, the middle of that order is going to be pretty nice.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I wasn't expecting the Rangers to kind of start going all in. I know that they're rebuilding. They have a good young core. But I was expecting like another year. But again, I think we kind of predicted this going in, and everybody predicted that after the 2020 COVID season, and then after the 2021, I'm not sure if we're going to get all the way through COVID season. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a lockout coming, and then you've got like, oh, okay, we could get through a full season, and everybody played, and we had a regular postseason and World Series. And so I think that's kind of where the money is coming from now. Everybody kind of held back a little bit last year, and all of a sudden there's money to spend, and the Rangers are like, hey, this division is a little bit open because the Astros are losing a couple of key parts. So I think the Rangers are looking at this and saying, and the A's, I mean, the A's aren't going to be there. And the Angels are just the Angels. I mean, they can sign Babe Ruth and they're still not going to make the playoffs, right? I mean, they can sign everybody. So I think they're looking at it and saying, hey, we can kind of get into the playoffs. And the playoff talk too. I don't know if you guys saw this today. In a proposed, this is from Jeff Passan on Twitter, in a proposed playoff expansion, there would be 14 teams. Division winners would choose their opponents in a 3-game wild card round, and the best record in the league would get a bye into the division series. So wow. I think they're starting to kind of look at, well, there is going to be playoff expansion. So if you're the Rangers and you're hanging in that division, you're like, let's go for it, man. Let's just throw some money out there and see what happens. I mean, the Marlins did it a couple times back in the 90s and 2000s, so it happens.
And just to kind of your point is what MLB, the reason why MLB wants to add more playoffs is a couple reasons. Creates more playoff games on television, which draw higher ratings than regular season games. So you extend that playoff, the length of the playoffs. You get, how many ever, what is it? I think now we have about 4 or 5 weeks of playoffs. You could extend that by another week or two. So that's going to be more TV money. And the second reason is to fight off the tanking that happens, because the incentive is, all we have to do is basically play 500 baseball and we could be in the mix. So that may de-incentivize tanking. So good. I don't know. I think everything's sort of becoming like Hunger Games television. Like, pick your team that you want to kill. Like do it on TV. And
well, I mean, Major League Baseball now is the last major league sport with just so few playoff teams.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, they're long series, and some of them are too short. I mean, a 1 game wild card sucks. That whole thing was just kind of a mess. So playing 2 out of 3 in a wild card is pretty fun, but it puts that emphasis on also going all out like the Giants did and winning 107 games, and then you get that bye. You don't even have to worry about that, divisional round or the playoff round or wild card round, and you're in.
This stuff always happens after we get screwed.
It does,
the wild card comes in after the Giants can't even win the division by winning 103 games. Bri, I know you were high on Marcus Semien. What did you think about what the Rangers did? And also, that takes more guys off the board for the Giants to be in competition for.
Again, my free agency list is very subject to change, but I really did want Marcus Semien. I thought he would be a great fit on the team, and all props to the Rangers for getting some big names right now. But it makes you think, like, why'd they deal Gallo in the middle of trade deadline? They could have Gallo, Semien, and Seager right now, but for the Rangers is you get 2 good players. What I've learned following baseball is that you can have 2 of the best players in the league, aka the Angels, and not go anywhere. It's like you got to have what we had essentially this past season. So Semien's a loss, but we got to make. I really want us to get someone still.
We're gonna talk about this when we get to Brad's splash hit Christmas list here. Okay, just a couple other people who were kind of involved here that I haven't mentioned. Starling Marte, 4 for 78 to the Mets. I was actually surprised that it was that low, but I guess it's because of his age, because he's a couple years older than a lot of these guys who are hitting free agency in their young 30s. What is he, like 33 right now, Brad?
I believe so. Yeah, he's a little bit on the upper end, and he's had his share of injuries,
and he had a positive steroid test.
Yeah,
he zapped half of his year.
Yeah, I think they looked at that though, going back, and they're like, that was so long ago, and it was with the Pirates.
Yeah.
You're gonna juice if you're with the Pirates.
Exactly.
You got to get your numbers up.
Okay, so then I guess that's really it, because like I said, you have a Byron Buxton who extends 7 for 100. He wasn't really on the Giants' radar, I don't think.
Well, he had been kicked around in trade rumors with the Giants for the last 2 seasons. I would have loved to have had him, but he's going to be a star. I mean, if he can stay healthy, that guy's going to be he is going to be an MVP. And that was really interesting. I don't know if you guys saw the breakdown of his MVP bonuses. It was like, if he was the MVP, and it was for every year of his contract, which I guess is unprecedented. Nobody's ever done that before. Next year, if he wins the MVP, it's a $9 million bonus. Then it goes down. Yeah, each year after that, it goes down to like 8, 7, 6. And then later in his career, if he's an MVP, it's $3 million each year. And so, I mean, I think the Twins are also banking on this guy. He's going to be an absolute superstar if he stays healthy.
And then if he has a great year, then they're going to be greasing the palms of the writers saying, let's not vote for him. Like,
right.
The only other one that I was kind of wondering about, and Brad and I talked about this off air, and he convinced me as to why maybe he wasn't on the Giants list, is Avisail. How do you pronounce his first name?
Avisail Garcia.
Avisail Garcia, 4 for 53. He was on the Brewers last year. So he was, right to the end playing in pretty close playoff baseball. And he goes to the Marlins, 4 for 53, right fielder. I was like, the Giants have a lot of guys like him, kind of predominantly one specific skill, maybe not great defensively. And then I said, look, they have Ruff, and they had Solano, and they have Flores, who they talked themselves into letting Flores play more than one position, but he sucks at both of them. And you told me that's probably why they're not in on him, is because they have too many of those guys.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Is the Giants already have Darren Ruff. They don't
Mhm.
need another Darren Ruff. I mean, Garcia, he was versatile earlier in his career. He played one game in center field last year, 121 in right field, 44 games in center field in 2020. He played last 2 seasons in Milwaukee. Before that, he was in Tampa Bay and then the Chicago White Sox. I remember, I want to say it was 2017 or 18, and the rumor was that the Giants were trying to trade for him as well. Near the trade deadline. It's 2017 or 18, somewhere in there. I think that love affair with him is kind of passed up a little bit. He's just kind of a big dude who crushes the ball but strikes out a lot. He had 121 strikeouts last year. I mean,
Probably doesn't walk enough for their taste either.
38 walks and,
Yeah.
and 515 plate appearances is not going to cut it for the Giants brass. So,
No.
yeah, I think that's why they kind of looked at him more and they're like, "Yeah, we got other guys."
Yeah, no, totally get that. All right, we're gonna bring on the Hot Take Bri segment now. I only know of 2 of these hot takes, so he may have a third up his sleeve that he has not alerted me to. But do you want to go for hot take number 1 here?
Just to quickly say something about hot take 3 is that I forgot that you wanted me to do a hot take 3, so I quickly came up with one on the way from the gym. So we'll see if this is a good one.
Awesome.
All right, let's go.
Yes.
Hot take number 1.
Hot take number 1. We have unfortunately just lost Buster Posey, one of the greatest Giants, in my opinion, of all time. And we have a guy that's been in the minor leagues who we drafted, was 2nd or 4th or 5th overall in a recent, semi-recent draft that is ready to come up, basically. He will be up next year. And my hot take is that he is not the next, not Buster Posey, of course, no one's going to be Buster Posey, but he is not the next consistent Giants catcher for the next 8 years. And I think that guy who's going to be that guy is still in the minor leagues, playing in San Jose right now, and his name is Patrick Bailey. So,
all right, Brad,
hot take number 1.
I want to hear your thoughts.
That's pretty
Patrick
warm.
Bailey being the guy to replace Buster and not Joey Bart.
I can, you know what? That is a good take. I like that. Is it hot? I think it's warm. I'm going to put my hand on it, and in a couple seconds, I'm going to pull it back. It's warm enough for that. I like it because you're right. I mean, he could be. I think the knock on Patrick Bailey right now is his inconsistent plate appearances. Defensively, he's phenomenal. I mean, he's throwing guys out left and right, and it calls a great game. I think the knock on him right now is the inconsistent hitting. I don't know. I think I actually have numbers for him from the fall league. If I
and just so
yeah,
a lot of people are following Patrick Bailey pretty closely, but just for those who aren't, he started the season. Now, obviously, last year or 2 years ago, minor league season was just scrapped, right? Because they couldn't have the minor league season in the way that they had. So he lost a year, as did Bart, though Bart played up. So he played on the major league team, but Patrick Bailey did not. So Patrick Bailey instead, he started out in the Eugene, the Eugene League, which is the high A, and he went out and hit a whole $185 with 2 home runs.
Yeah.
290 OBP, 296 slugging. And so then they dropped him to the low A, which is San Francisco. Or I'm sorry, San Jose, like Brian said. And he hit a lot better. He hit 322, 415 on base, 531 slugging, hit 7 home runs in San Jose. So that was kind of what they were looking for him to do, which is just to get sort of back to what they expected out of him. But unfortunately, because he lost that whole stinking year to not playing, this was really his first year in the minors. So they started him out in high A. He had to go back to low A. I imagine he either starts next season in a high A again, or maybe they have him in double A. So all hope is that he just needed a little bit of reps underneath his belt at a major league level.
Yeah, and in the Arizona Fall League that just finished up, he hit 292 with a home run, 5 ribs. OPS was 792, which wasn't super fantastic. But again, he's still developing.
Yeah.
But I think he could push Bart for the job in probably 2 seasons. The catching landscape for the Giants the next 2 or 3 seasons is so wide open. I mean, next year we're looking Patrick Bailey and Curtis Michael Casale. I mean, so we kind of have that locked up at this point for next year. But after that, it could be an open battle in 2023. So you're right. I like that one.
Okay, so here's my 2 cents on that. Let's say Bart hits out of the gate, which I think we're hoping he's that right-handed punch pop replacing a Posey. Maybe not as good of a hitter, but just has pop from the right side. But let's say his defense is like, not great. And, to other teams, his value is 100% as a catcher. His value as a catcher, a hitting catcher, is always going to be higher than, say, if you move him to third base or if you move him to first base. But we have this thing called the DH possibly coming. And if he can hit, but he's not great behind the plate, maybe it's not next year, but it could be the following year that Bailey, who seems to be the opposite, which is his defensive skills are a little bit higher right now than his offensive skills, he could be the guy actually behind the plate while Bart DHs or finds another position, or maybe they do trade him. Because like I said, the value for Joey Bart is as a catcher. It used to always bother me when people would say, we need to move Posey to first base. And I would say, do you know that he's like the best, one of the 2 best catchers behind the plate, which makes him so much more valuable than just shoving someone who hits 20 home runs and hits 80 guys in to first base, because then now he's like a below average first baseman from the offensive side. So that I never understood that. But so again, his value is always going to be higher as a catcher, but I do wonder about his defensive skill set when he comes up to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like the main thing for my reasoning behind this, is because I was listening to another podcast with Grant Brisbee and Hunter Pence, and on my way home from Arizona a couple days ago, and Hunter was like talking about Buster, and he was like saying, just like admiring how good he was on defense. And he kind of made a point that was like, well, if you're a catcher, like your defense is like more important basically than your offense. And so that was kind of like my thought process. And if Joey Bart, has a poor defensive year, then that might not be, that's kind of why.
Yeah. And look, if you're listening to Brisbee and Hunter, love it. If you're listening to Locked On and you're listening to Ben, love it. We love Ben. Even if you're listening to our buddies at Giant Cocktails, love those guys. But you cannot listen to any other podcast with 2 guys in their 40s who grew up in the 80s, because that's our corner. That is right. Our corner. Nobody else can take that corner from us. All right, what is your second hot take?
Hot take number 2. Hot take number 2 has something to do with a deal that was made a long time ago. I think that Chris Bryant, if he does not re-sign with the Giants, that trade, who we gave up in Alexander Canario, and I think the other kid's name is Caleb Killian.
Yes.
And who we gave up is going to bite us in the butt the same, if not more, than Zach Wheeler has.
What do you think about the heat index on that one, Brad?
That one's pretty hot. That is a fire take. I like that one. And the reason I like that is because and at the time we made the deal, I was like, low level pitcher. Yeah, the guy is throwing smoke. and striking guys out left and right. And Canario, who knows when he's going to be up. But now look at the Giants' MO and the value they're starting to place on their minor league system. And the rumor that came out that the Giants weren't super happy with Chris Bryant. And again, rumor, I don't know, but just saw it on Twitter a couple of times that, the Giants brass weren't necessarily happy with Chris Bryant, weren't happy with his defense, happy with him as a human being. The guy's a great guy. But what they got in return in terms of flexibility in the infield and outfield, because of his defensive woes, they weren't super happy about that. So yeah, that's a good take. I like that one.
So the question for me to question the Giants and how who knows if that's exactly how they feel. They may feel that way. But the fact that they were willing to put this guy in center field in the highest stakes first round playoff series in the history of the Giants, they couldn't have been that frustrated with his defense, right? Because they put him in a specific position that is highly valued for defense. So that kind of makes me wonder if that's true or not. Though I will say, because of Evan Longoria, he could not play his natural position, which is third base, because Longoria couldn't go to the, I was kind of hoping they would try out Longoria at second base, but at this point he's so deep into his career, probably getting him onto the other side of the field may take a little bit longer than he was willing to bet on himself for. But the flip side is that Bryant couldn't even play his natural position because they had someone there, and thus he had to play right field, he had to play center field, he had to play left field, he had to play a little bit of first base. I kind of have some sympathy for him there if we're talking strictly about defense.
Yeah, and does that end up pushing him eventually to a team where he gets to, exclusively play third base this year? It's
interesting though, because if you're selling him, right, if you're the agent, you're like, look at how many positions this guy played.
Yeah,
he played all of these positions and he did them fairly well. He didn't complain. It didn't really affect his bat too much, though he could have hit a little bit better. But, overall, I was okay with the Chris Bryant experience. But I was also okay with the Chris Bryant experience knowing or hoping that, we had the possibility of signing him. But when they traded for him, we said that it was going to be hard because of who his agent is and because of how, he often doesn't give hometown deals and all that sort. But let's talk about quickly the guys that the Giants gave up in that trade that prompted this hot take. So Alexander Canario, in San Jose, he hit .235 with 9 bombs, .433 slugging. He essentially did the same thing when he was traded. 9 bombs, less at bats, had a little bit lower of an average, .429 slugging. So in both instances, not a high average, but was hitting the ball out of the ballpark. And I think he is 21 years old. And so Caleb Killian, he's 24, and he had a really, really strong season in just 4 starts at Eugene. He was pretty lights out. Then they moved him up to Richmond, and he pitched excellent. 11 starts, 2.43 ERA, 0.94 WHIP. And when they traded him, and I think he was on the Tennessee Smokies, the AA affiliate of the Cubs, he only had 15 innings, and he had a 4.02 ERA. Strikeouts were good as well. So, I'm sure, who knows when it comes to a 24-year-old guy who's, still sitting in AA, but, his stats just on the statistics test, he looked like he looked like he had a really good season last year. So the one of those two, in order for Bri's hot take to be true, has to become an all-star. So we'll see who that is.
Well, and also look at Scott Boras too, going back to the Chris Bryant thing. He's going to easily take that and say, let's add up what a third baseman would make hitting this, plus what an outfielder would make hitting this,
Yeah.
plus what a
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
you know. So he may bust the 43 mil a year average. No, he's not going to. That's a Scherzer thing.
All right, now this one's coming blind. I have no idea about this hot take here. What is hot take number 3?
Hot take number 3 is coming with a little bit of FOMO, some fear of missing out. You know, seeing all these guys fly off the board has got me thinking a lot. And I'm a big basketball fan. I'm a big Warriors fan. So that's kind of what initiated this whole take. The Warriors right now are in an interesting situation where they are a win now team and also a developing team at the same time. They're trying to bridge the gap from the present to the future in an interesting way. And I think the Giants have, like the Warriors, some guys that they kind of need to. They have the Giants have Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, whereas the Warriors have Steph, Clay, and Draymond. You know, those are guys you owe it to them. You basically owe it to them to still compete if you still have them on your team. And with the Giants, I think they're in a similar situation where it's like, you know, you owe it to Brandon Belt, you owe it to Brandon Crawford, but also we have such a deep farm system with all these guys coming up in the next 2 to 3 years where it's almost like we're kind of still developing in this win now mode too. And my thoughts, though, is the Warriors are currently the number 1 team in basketball right now. They were able to make a little bit of a free agency, like bring in the guys that they needed. And I think the FOMO for me comes in where I don't think the Giants have done that yet. So, you know, my thing is if we run it back, this is my hot take. If we run it back and it continues as it is right now, in the free agency, we have gotten zip, except for Alex Cobb. If that happens and we get no one, 3rd place in the NL West.
That is not a very popular hot take.
No, that one is. I don't have any ice cubes left, but my hand would be wrapped around an ice cube and it dripping down my hand right now. I don't like that one. And the reason I don't is because I've got a segment coming up that's going to tell you otherwise, because there's a lot of guys that are still out there. I know we're missing out on the big guns, but when you look at the price tags of the guys that have been going so far, I personally am glad we haven't spent the money on those guys. Because again, last year, who did the Giants have that had a huge price tag? And they ended up winning 107 games. I mean, I think the Giants have that formula at the top that trickles down to everybody else through Gabe Kapler, through the coaching staff, where you can band together a bunch of guys who just want to win and go out and compete and play hard every game. And they can do it. I think, you know, I'm a Rams fan. And looking at my team right now, you can go out and get all the big names you want to get. It doesn't translate to jack squat, as Chris Farley used to say. Because if they're not gelling, if they're not playing together, if it's not trickling down from the top, it really doesn't matter. So I think the Giants can get around your FOMO, and I think they can still build off of what they did last year and still win 100 games. I mean, this could be a 100-game winning team with just a couple of key pieces.
All right. So, Brad, did you want to go off camera for a second here to get your little
I'm hearing something up on the roof.
All right. We're going to remove Brad from the stream. We're going to bring him right back. But so what you said about Alex Cobb, and we'll talk about Cobb for a second. So Cobb pitched with the Angels last year after 3 years in Baltimore, and then, like 5 or 6 years in Tampa. And in Tampa Bay, he had 2 really excellent seasons as a starter, but that was 13 and 14. Had a decent bounce back season in 17. And then in 18 had an awful season, though he was pitching for Baltimore. 19 looks like he was hurt. And then 20 as well. So last year, 2021, 8-3, 3.76 ERA, striking out about 1 an inning. His FIP was 2.92, so it was much better than his actual ERA. So it looks like there was a little bit of bad luck there with some of those balls in play and fielding and park dimensions and otherwise. So Alex Cobb, he's one of those guys who's not necessarily a sexy free agent at 34 years of age. Not the kind of guy who's gonna make the Giants win the free agency, but he may be somebody who, like Brad said earlier, and we bring Brad back here, Santa. Alex Cobb could be one of what you said is, maybe 7 or 8 guys who throw some starter innings this year for the Giants.
Yeah, and it's just my take, my coming up with that take was we are potentially, well, for sure we've lost 2, but potentially losing 3 of our top 6 players of last year. So that's why, and that's why I've prefaced it with basically saying, like, look, if we don't get anyone, like, I hope Brad's list gives me a lot of hope here, but if we don't end up getting anyone, we just run it back with, the exact same thing without adding the potential what's still in the air is the Castellanos, the Suzukis, and, the rest of the guys who are still up there. But yeah.
All right, Brad, it is now time for Brad's splash hit Christmas list. Who is on your list of possible free agents that you want the Giants to sign?
All right. I thought Santa was just up there, and I handed off my list. This is my splash hit Christmas list. The reason it's a splash hit list is because I went through the top 20 per ESPN free agents on the list. Who is left? Who could make a splash hit for us and make Brian's FOMO go away? And there's a lot on this list that could do that. Let's go from top down. So number 4 on the free agent list who's still out there. This is a long shot. This is going to be if there's a DH implemented. Obviously, if he doesn't sign within the next couple of days before we hit the lockout, Trevor Story had a good second half of the season last year, bounced back. 29 years old, has only played shortstop, 733 games in the majors. He has only played shortstop. We have a shortstop. So this would, Trevor Story would have to be a DH specifically, fill in at shortstop for Brandon Crawford on rest days. So it's a possibility, right? He could be out there. So that's number 4 on the list. Number 8.
What can I ask you about your number 4 guy?
Absolutely.
Are you scared by his?
I'm scared by everything about Trevor Story, but go ahead.
His away from Coors Field split: 241, 310, 442.
Say those numbers again. That was so bad. I tuned it out. Go ahead and say that again.
241 batting average, 310 on base, 442 slugging on the games away from Coors Field.
Yes. So definitely worried about that. But in the Giants lineup with the Giants coaching staff, if they see something, if they can grab onto him and find something. I mean, he's number 4 on the list for a reason. The guy, so his away numbers were awful, but you also have to take into consideration the team he was playing on.
Mm-hmm.
The Rockies are trying to contend again this year. I mean, we saw that just come out on Twitter a couple of days ago. Everybody's like, what the hell are they talking about? They, didn't even trade Gray, and then they didn't give him a qualifying offer, and he just walked, and they get nothing for him.
Right.
So here they are, and then Trevor Story's gone. Same thing. They didn't try to trade him. So I think you have to take into consideration the team he played on the last couple of seasons were awful. That's going to bring your everything down. Arenado had to scratch and claw to get out of there. I'm not terribly worried about the away from numbers. He's always hit at Oracle pretty well. 81 games there. I think he could do well.
So
again,
just so people know, 2018 hit 37 home runs. 2019 hit 35. Last year, probably his worst year since 2018, 251. Still hit 24 bombs though, so he still got the power even in a down year. Unfortunately for him, if he had his 2018 year instead of his 2021 year. He's probably right up there with Correa.
He probably goes instead of maybe even Semien to Texas. Who knows? But he's up there. I've got him on the list because I think he would make an impact in the Giants lineup, a big impact in the Giants lineup, if there was a DH, because I don't think there's any other spot for him.
No.
The Giants aren't apt to take a guy like that and say, now go play second base. I know you never have, but we need you at second base. I don't think Trevor Story would be too into that either. So next on the list, a guy we're all familiar with, number 8 on the ESPN top 20, Kris Bryant. He's still out there. He could still come back to the Giants. We just talked a lot about him. We know he could play infield, outfield. We know who he is. We know what he can do. Giants brass knows who he is and what he can do. But he's a Scott Boras client.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw what Scherzer did. Does he sign? Does he even bother signing in the next 2 days? That's the question. A lot of these guys, do they bother signing within the next 2 days? Or are these guys we're going to be looking at around February when this is all over and then the flurry begins? But
I think great argument for Bryant
Mhm.
is sort of what you were talking about the Rockies. The Cubs just have not been good of late. They were awful and they sold off everybody.
yeah,
So that can't be a great place to play, especially after you win the World Series and you're the joy of the town. All Cubs fans root hard for Kris Bryant. Like they love that guy. So
Yep.
I know that last year, I wouldn't say he had a great year, but he did hit the ball a lot harder when he got to the Giants, which could be something about the coaching staff and everything. So,
Yeah.
If they can't get anybody let's say they strike out on all these guys, or they just don't like the deals that are being set for all of these guys, Correa's gonna get whatever Seager got, and maybe even a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
They're not in that game for him at this moment, but maybe Kris Bryant, maybe he's a 5-year guy for, $25 million or something, or whatever it is. And the Giants just go, look, we can return this guy back to his MVP season. And in his MVP season, he's actually worth $35 million, not $25 million, but we're going to get him for $25 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. He's a good clubhouse guy. And the Giants know what they had with him. And he liked San Francisco. And he told reporters that he ultimately makes the decision, not Scott Boras. So, although we know that's not true. All right. Number 12 on the top 20 of ESPN that is still out there. The top pitcher, believe it or not, on ESPN's list that is left, starting pitcher, Clayton Kershaw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even more than Strowman.
He is higher than Strowman.
Wow.
On ESPN's list. And again, he's only 33 and he feels like he's 42 because of all of his injuries and he's been around forever. So, Texas Rangers are pretty hot and heavy on him too. It's his hometown. But he's 33. Giants would love to add another left-hander to their rotation. And I think the Giants can get him for maybe a 1 or a 2 year show me deal. He's familiar with the National League West. He's familiar with all of the ballparks. If the Dodgers don't want to bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal, which they may be back in on him now, that,
especially after losing Scherzer.
Exactly. With Scherzer gone, with Robbie Ray gone, Gausman gone, all these guys gone, they're probably looking and go, hey, well, we've got Kershaw. We know what we have. But again, the injuries, I think that's the key. And I think Kershaw wants to see, last thing I heard, he wanted to kind of see what his injury was completely like and get everything medically checked out before he even jumped into the free agency fold. Kind of running out of options at this point, but a 1 or 2 year deal. Brian, you like that? You like Clayton Kershaw?
I like Kersh. Friends with Brandon Belt. I like Kersh.
There you go.
But by the way, Brian was talking about how some of these websites that kind of give you averages and what the expected market value is for these guys. So Spot Track has the market value for Bryant at 6 years, 141. So 24 million average annual salary. That's six. I don't know if the Giants would do that 6th year, because that 6th year could I think he's already 30, so that'd be his year 36. But guys keep themselves in pretty dang good shape these days. But what Brian was saying was basically that the contracts are being signed right now are actually being higher than the market value, so that could be low for him. But just to give people an idea about what is sort of expected for Chris Bryant's market value.
Yeah, and Scott Boras. That's pretty much all you have to say. So after Kershaw, we got number 13 on the list, and I think we're all high on Nick Castellanos, right fielder mainly, right-handed hitter, 29 years old. It's going to be a huge contract. Do the Giants give a big contract to Castellanos instead of Chris Bryant? I mean,
okay. So here's the argument.
Same age.
Here's the argument against Castellanos.
Mm-hmm.
Which is his career WAR is amazing if you take out defense, which takes us back to the DH, right? If you sign him to be your DH, his WAR is actually heavily is going to be weighted heavier, because you don't lose value by putting him out in the outfield. But when you talk about the offense, and again, we have to sort of look at it in this way, his stats are looking pretty decent. He had 34 bombs last year, hit 309. Like, that puts him right at the tops of the Giants. In 2019, he had a half of a season with the Cubs, and 16 bombs and like 212 at bats. So
that was one of the craziest post trade deadline tears I think we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, because he hit 11 bombs. I said half of a season, but he was only with the Cubs for half because he got traded.
Yeah.
But so he had 11 bombs in 403 at bats with the Tigers, got traded to the Cubs, and then in the 212 at bats with the Cubs, hit even more home runs. So he only hit 27 home runs that season, but 16 of them were in such a short span after the trade. So the guy's got legitimate power, and it's getting better as he gets a little bit older. And his overall batting average is getting better. Last season was his best season overall. The other, he also doesn't really walk a ton, so his on-base percentage isn't going to be great. But again, we have the DH. His value is so much higher than if you have to play him in right field for 145 games a season.
Yeah, for sure. I want to check in on Brian. Am I making you feel better?
Yeah, I like Castellanos. I think we'd have to hide him in left, because I feel like right field's harder at Oracle.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Yaz has that down. I mean, he was a Gold Glove finalist this year, so I think anything we can do to not take Yaz out of right field, I think is going to benefit this team in the long run. So yeah, a move like that, and you take Castellanos and you go, here, you can go to left field. But I got another guy coming up.
All right,
who can kind of jump all over the place, who's not talked about a whole lot and has some pretty good seasons the last couple of years. But before we get to him, next on the list, number 14, Carlos Rodon, 28 years old, led another left-handed pitcher, 13-5 last year. Again, the win-loss thing is super old school, but he's out there winning ball games because he had a 2.37 ERA, a 183 ERA plus, and a 2.65 FIP, which was nasty. Why is Rodon not all the way up near the top? And I think it's because last year was the first year he kind of put it all together. He's shown the flashes here and there, but last year he finally put it together, and he's 28. He's going to command a pretty big, long contract. He's not at the show me age At 28 years old, I don't think he's going to sit there and go, yeah, I'll take a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
Because after that, he's 30 years old and he's hitting the market again. So I would say the minimum would be 5 years for him.
And if you are a little worried about Rodon, the worry is because he had Tommy John about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And he had the great season in 21, but he had a shoulder injury later in the year. And when he came back, velocity wasn't as high as it was. So there's concern when you have a guy who's got arm injuries early-ish in his career. And what you're going to have to bet against is that you can take care of him.
Yeah.
I think the Giants take care of their starting pitchers. There's a concern of them going through the third time in the order because of the high pitch count. They want to save these guys so that we get the length of their season rather than just the short sprints of the season. So that may be a play where your team is like, look, we know how to take care of these guys. We can prevent some of these injuries. When he's healthy, he's awesome. And that's the bet with Rodon.
Yeah. And on top of that too, again, the Giants are looking for a 162 game rotation, not a 5-man rotation. So would Rodon be okay with jumping in and saying, you know what, I'll kind of limit myself this year. And if I end up not going 32 or 33 or 34 starts, that's fine. If I get, 26, 27, that's good. I don't know. He's a young guy. Has he bought into that? Who knows? He probably wants the ball again, like Scherzer. He probably wants it every day.
Yeah. All right. Who's next?
All right. Number 15 on the list, another outfielder. And this guy is super versatile, Michael Conforto. And he's another left-handed bat that the Giants could use in his career. 334 games in right field, 259 in left field, 146 in center field. That's your prototype Giants outfielder. And he's got a lot of power. Not a huge average guy, but if the Giants are looking to add some more power and versatility, a guy like Conforto at 28 years old could be, you give him a 4 or 5 year deal. I mean, this is like your La Stella type of signing. La Stella got a 3-year deal. Conforto maybe a 3-4 year deal. He's not the sexy pick. He's number 15 on the ESPN list, but he's still in the top 20. I think that would be a really good fit for the Giants.
So what's interesting about him, and this is unfortunate with him and Story, in that in their free agent year, they basically have their worst year of like the last 5 years of their career, right? So I do think somebody is going to take a flyer on him and give him a multi-year contract. But Keith Law's write-up of Conforto, he basically said he's one of those guys who may be better off taking a 1-year contract, having a killer year, and then going back into free agency next year after his killer year. Because he said if you take the averages of his previous like 3 or 4 seasons, what you get a guy who you're going to give a 4-year or 5-year deal to. But then if you just look solely at last season, he's not that guy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. He may be like the most polarizing guy out there in the free agent market.
Well, how about a 2-year deal with an opt-out after 1? I mean, that's something you could throw at him.
Yeah, I mean, he had 3 consecutive years from 17 to 19, 27, 28, 33 bombs.
Yeah.
And he walks a lot more than who did we just talk about? Castellanos. Yeah.
And
he walks more
and almost triple the amount that Avisail Garcia walks.
All right, who's next?
All right, last on my list in the top 20, number 18. Here he is. You ready? Marcus Strowman.
Oh,
30-year-old right-handed pitcher, 3.77 ERA last year, 109 ERA plus. Not a stellar season. 3.49 WHIP though FIP was the best of his career, believe it or not. So again, that could be another one too, where everybody's thinking he's going to sign this 5 or 7 year deal. again, maybe he takes a 3-year opt out after every year type of deal.
Mhm.
Those are starting to float around for pitchers where he says, well, I'm going to show you what I can do. What I mostly like about Strowman is that we're losing Cueto. And we get that swagger back with Strowman. I mean, Strowman is fun to watch on
Yeah.
the mound. He's got great attitude. Such a nice guy too. Watching him on Twitter and everything, and he's very much a civil rights leader and fighter. Him and Kapler would get along great. The city of San Francisco would love him. I think he would be a great fit for the Giants. I've kind of wanted him from the start, but I didn't know how he would fit. But now you're starting to look at everybody else who was going away, and you're starting to say, whoa, okay, Strowman on a short deal could be what the Giants are looking for.
So I think the thing, if you're looking at Strowman and kind of wondering what is his value, last year you mentioned he had a little bit of a down year, but the reason, at least the reason I think, maybe his stats that are not on the back of the baseball card were okay is because he struck out more than usual. He's surprisingly to me. I thought he was a bigger strikeout guy than he is. His best season for strikeouts was 7.8 per 9 innings until last year. Now last year he only threw just under 60 innings, and he actually gave up a lot of hits too. But I'm sorry. I was reading his 2019 stat. So last year he was back up to 7.9, and solid year last year, most definitely. Good year considering he was playing for the Mets, who were pretty much 500 for most of the year. So I looked at the sport track, and they consider him to be where is it? Market value. So they consider him to be a 21 million average annual salary guy. So something around 4 years, 84. So not quite the Gausman, not quite the Robbie Ray. Again, does Farhan go for a 4-year deal for a starting pitcher, and who is 30 years old, and by the time the season starts, he will be 31. I think he's going to be 31 by the time the season starts. So
yeah, May 1st.
There you go. Right, a month into the season. So who are his statistical comparisons? One of his statistical comparisons is one Madison Bumgarner. It's interesting. But yeah, so I feel like if they were thinking out of all of those pitchers, Robbie Ray, Kevin Gausman, Strowman, Scherzer, if we were going to give a 4-year or a 5-year deal to any one of those guys, I do wonder if Strowman is the guy that they were thinking of doing that. So we'll sort of figure that out, because I don't know if he was talking about signing sooner than later, but that's going to be an interesting one. I really wonder, because again, Keith Law has him as the number 1 player on the starting pitching market for his, and like you said, ESPN had him much lower. So looks like there's a little bit of bipolarity with Strowman as a starter too. But I know Bri likes him, so Bri has been tweeting at him, tagging him on Instagram.
Strowman's a Logan Webb fan. I wanted to see him in San Francisco. But with Strowman though, I hope, like what Brad was saying, not the 3-year with opt out after every year. Because if they sign him to like that 5-year, it's like, well, then why didn't you give it to Gausman? If they signed Conforto to a 5-year, it's like, well, or 4-year, it's like, well, Marte was sitting right there. So, I'm just that would confuse me a little bit if they end up pulling the trigger on big money on some of these remaining guys.
But you also have to consider too, these guys. I mean, it gets thrown around a lot, and I don't know how much this factors into it, but the California taxes. They're a lot, so you have to give them a lot more money on top of it. So a lot of these guys, they may not see San Francisco as a profitable great place for their brand to go to. And that might be, Giants might have been in on Gausman all the way to the end, and then we'll find out later. I'm sure we'll find out more as the next couple of days go on, but maybe he just liked it north of the border. Maybe he has a soft spot for the Canadians. I don't know. I mean, who knows with some of the picks that these guys make. So.
All right, so that is it. We thought we were going to have a short show for once. And absolutely not, 100% not. But Bri, quickly talk about the BAM.
Okay, so the BAM was a podcast started by me and a couple of my friends from college, and we just love talking about sports, so we thought we'd record ourselves doing it. And recently, we just added another show. We added a baseball show where my buddies Rom and Ryan, talk about baseball once a week every Tuesday. And it's kind of interesting because Rom's a big Giants fan and Ryan's a big Dodger fan. So getting them to try to be, not biased is a very interesting listen. And they just did their free agency podcast. And it was interesting because my buddy Ryan, who's the Dodger fan, was trying to be not biased, but I don't think the Giants ended up getting one guy in his whole list.
He's got to be heartbroken with Scherzer and Seager.
He's so heartbroken right now. He's so heartbroken to the point where he's getting hysterical and saying that Freddie Freeman's going to come to LA.
Oh no! Oh no!
So
should we break it to him or no?
He's going through it right now. But for them, they've got some interesting people that they are trying to talk to. They for sure got a. Someone in the minor leagues is going to be on their podcast this Tuesday. So that'll be an interesting listen because I'd love to hear, from a minor leaguer's perspective. There was a recent, rule change in the minors where they get like housing funded. There's just a couple of things where I'd be interested to hear from that guy. So, baseball pod up, basketball pod up. Ideally, more get put up in the near future, or in some time.
You're gonna have to find a U of A kids
guy.
who know football. You can talk football.
So, yeah.
What about social media? Where do they find you on
social
where do they
media,
find the BAM on
find
social
us
media?
On Instagram at the BAM Pod. Twitter, don't worry about it right now. We can't get the handle. There's a BAM Pod where there's some food guys that just talk about food in 2018 who have no interest in giving me the handle for less than $500. So the BAM Pod on Instagram, the BAM Pod on TikTok. TikTok's a good one for any of the younger audiences out there. I don't know how much younger audience you guys are pulling right now.
Come on, 40-year-old guys.
Come on, man.
You guys are pulling me and my brother for sure. But
the 18 to 49 demographic, we're hot in that demographic.
I think my 15-year-old daughter every now and then puts it on, but it's not very often.
So yeah,
it's
Instagram
just to say, look at my lame dad.
Instagram and TikTok at the BAM Pod. We have some cool social media posts. My buddy Mason's works in graphic design, and he's really good at that stuff. So it's been fun seeing it grow and continue to grow. So
also just if someone's looking on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, they just search for the BAM.
Yes. It is just the BAM, and it should be the first one that pops up. Screw
nice.
you food guys.
All right, so we are done here. We will be back next week. Next week is already December. Holy cow.
Yeah, I'm in the mood. I mean, look at I everything. We're ready.
There we go.
Like I started decorating before Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving's a bunch of bull crap. That's just you just eat and hang out. It's Christmas season.
All right, so we'll be back next week to talking about lockout stuff because, and we'll do it. Well, yeah. I don't understand it all anyways, so I would have to talk about it in like layman's term because I don't understand any of the. I'm gonna have to just listen to Ken Rosenthal and read his stuff to sort of figure out what's going on. But yeah, we'll be back. So for Brian and the BAM Pod, and for Brad, I'm Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.